His work is the most cited by more economists than anyone else in the world, according to research by the University of Connecticut. We're talking about Nobel Prize-winning economist and Columbia professor Joseph Stiglitz. We caught up with him today in New York to get his outlook, and it seems rather grim.
It's not a very good backdrop. One of the reasons that I've said that we need to be prepared for another round of a stimulus is, we can't be sure, but more likely than not, we will need something else to keep our economy going. All this talk about the stock market doing well, that's not what most people care about. All this talk about growth is resuming. The rate of growth that almost everybody anticipates is not enough to bring down the unemployment rate to a level that is meaningful for most Americans.
So what does that mean for the unemployment rate? Does it mean we continue to see a high unemployment rate next year, the year after? What?
I'm afraid, again, most likely that's going to be the case. Just think about it in the following way. Our labor force would normally grow at about 1%. Mm-hmm. Productivity would normally grow 2.3%. Good years has done much better than that. That means if we don't grow at around 3.3%, we aren't increasing output enough to bring down the unemployment rate.
And you don't see that kind of growth?
I don't. No, very few people see. We may have quarters that we do better than that, but not over the 2-year period.
So, Professor Stiglitz, what are you saying then? In a year from now or 2 years, a 10% unemployment rate, a 10.5%? I mean, what do you? 12%, 13%?
The unemployment rate is a little bit of a squishy number because people might drop out of the labor force, and we don't call that unemployed. But they feel unemployed, their family feels unemployed. So what I think that we can say is, yes, the likelihood is that 10% unemployment is a real possibility a year or even 2 years from now. And this is not a question of lags. You hear a lot saying, oh, yes.
It's a lagging indicator.
Lagging indicator. If the GDP were growing at 5%, then we're talking about a lagging indicator. But if GDP is not growing faster than 3.5%, then this is not a question of lags. This is a question of where we are.
We've had jobless recoveries before. What would be so traumatic, though, about this one?
This recession is very different from any of the recessions that we've had since the Great Depression. Most of those other recessions were, you might say, minor adjustments. We accumulated too much inventory, we decrease our inventories, and we start producing again. We're doing that a little bit now, but that's only one of the many parts of this downturn. A few of the other downturns were caused by the Fed stepping on the brakes too hard because it was worried about inflation.
Right.
That's not this problem. That one is easy. You discover you have a problem, you put your foot off the brake, you put a little bit on the accelerator, you start going again. This problem is that before the crisis, we had an economy that was based on debt, Americans living beyond their means, even when we fix the banking system. And I have no confidence that we're doing that the right way. But even when we do, what's going to replace that debt-financed consumption that sustained the economy?
We're not putting anything in place to do that, correct?
We're not putting anything in place to do that.
All right, as for the banks, Professor Stiglitz says the government needs to address the too-big-to-fail banks, an issue he often talks about. His one basic suggestion that the government require that they just become smaller.